Hello, everybody. Welcome to Chatting with Charlie, EB-5 Investor Outlook for November of 2025. My name is Joey Barnett. I am a partner at WR Immigration, and I, of course, am joined by Charlie Oppenheim. Uh, Thank you so much for coming on, Charlie, and speaking to us about the new EB-5 data that we have and giving your insights. So great to see you.
Good to see you, everybody.
And for everyone who is joining us, we thank you so much. You can ask questions, I believe, in the chat function, so feel free to use that. And also, you can feel free to reach out to us afterwards with any questions. Again, this is who we are. Oh man, I need a new uh, headshot. This is for um, informational purposes only. We do want to help though, so please feel free to reach out to us, visalaw@wolfsdorf.com. We do everything in EB-5. We have a gigantic EB-5 team. I don't think anybody files more cases than we do. We were doing some data, and I think we file up close, right around 15% of all cases since the RIA has been passed. So we are very busy right now. Our teams are hard at work, and we would be happy to help. Our firm, WR Immigration, we have 10 offices globally. I think over 40 attorneys at this point. We're consistently ranked as one of the top firms in EB-5. And we are so happy that Charlie joined our team. I don't even know, how long ago was that? A couple of years at this point.
Yeah, I think it was 2022, maybe.
2022. Well, I'm really excited that Charlie's here for EB-5 because um, as we get closer to final action dates, and once those are there, Charlie's ability to kind of look at the data and read the tea leaves are going to be more and more important. That actually hasn't been because it's just been current, right? Everyone has been able to file. So once, things start to change in the EB-5 sense in the reserve categories, Charlie's insights are going to be becoming even more important. And so that's why we're so thankful for all of our listeners and people who join us. And I just want to make sure. Okay, good. Got the questions open, so I see them, and we will try to get to them as well. All right, let's just jump right into it. The Visa Bulletin of 2025 for November, kind of boring, huh, Charlie? Why is that?
Yeah, really, the visa office seems to have made the policy, and I predicted this several years ago, that they're making the major changes on a quarterly basis, that being, at least for the first half of the year, that being big changes in October, then January, and then potentially April, with potentially some minor adjustments in between if their original estimates were lower. I preferred to be moving the dates when I was in office, preferred to move on a more incremental basis, maybe monthly, because then you can see if the real impact of your decisions and make adjustments then as necessary. But anyway, uh, we didn't see anything really move on the employment side this month.
Right. And so it advanced for most categories or a lot of categories in October with the new fiscal year, and it's just sort of sat since then.
Yeah.
No real changes. And that's great. The EB-5 reserve categories remain current. That was something that everyone, I mean, I have a number of clients, they were really kind of freaking out about, hey, is it going to be current in November? And now I have a new set of clients who want to file as soon as possible, who are concerned, is it going to be current in December? And when will there be a final action date? Because that is a huge benefit right now for EB-5 investors, is the ability to file that adjustment of status while it is current in the categories. That allows you to get the EAD and the advanced parole. Those are coming in as quick as 6 months or so. It gives you sort of a backup option to remain in the United States. And that's a huge opportunity that will be lost at some point in the future once there is a final action date. So that's why everyone is looking at this and wondering what's going to be happening. And I guess let's just get it right out here in the open. I mean, Charlie, what do you think is going to happen in December? Just based on the data that we've seen, based on DOS's policy that you just mentioned. I mean, what are you anticipating?
Unfortunately, the State Department, while they had previously been posting number use on a monthly basis. They haven't done so since May, which is very unfortunate. And we do not have access to what is happening with USCIS in terms of the use of adjustment of status numbers. But that being said, I would expect all of the unreserved category, or excuse me, all of the reserved categories to remain current for the month of December.
Okay, that's excellent to hear, and I'm sure a relief for a lot of people out there, so that's great. So yeah, every month, well, historically, or at least for the past several years, the Department of State has put out their monthly statistics. That has stopped. USCIS does indicate how many employment-based adjustments have been adjudicated on a quarterly basis, but they don't necessarily break it out by this is for EB-5. So we don't really know that until the end of the year with the Department of State annual report when they put that all together. So for right now, when we're in the kind of the sort of in between time, until then, we're sort of operating a little bit in the dark. But I'm glad to hear that you still think it's going to remain open in December. That will keep the flow of EB-5 capital coming in, and a lot of people happy and keep getting advantage of this. So let's move then to this new data that came out by USCIS, which is very cool because they finally sort of did what we asked them to do. We've been asking them to do for years and years and years, and I don't know if it's because they've been sued so many times or FOIA'd, and they keep track of it anyway, so they just say, you know what, let's just get it out there in the open. I don't care the reason why. I'm just happy that they do. Maybe it means that they're listening to Chatting with Charlie, which would be very cool. But anyway, so here's some of the insight. I'm not going to read it out to you guys. You guys can take a look at it. But the big thing is that most cases that are being filed are being approved, and they've approved a lot of I-526s in that quarter from April to June of 2025, significantly more than what they had done previously. And there is still a significant demand of I-526 petitions that remain pending at USCIS. It also shows direct EB-5 cases. Just stay away from them. They're so difficult. I know people like doing them, but I just think you have a real big uphill battle. The job creation with a regional center, the indirect and induced jobs that you get to count is significant, and it makes the EB-5 process a lot cleaner and a lot easier for USCIS to approve. I'm dealing with so many direct EB-5 issues at the 526 stage, at the 829 stage. It's a headache. I'm telling people they don't want to deal with it. But these are the numbers like that this data actually gave us, and we broke it down by fiscal year, by visa category, and by country of chargeability. Charlie, what are your takeaways from this?
I think this is, very good news. It's showing the continued interest in the programs, and that it is a strong area to be looking at.
What are your thoughts about rural versus high unemployment and how that's kind of flipped a little bit?
I think that in the early stages, the high unemployment, there was a surge in the numbers. I wonder if people overthought the issue and it originally maybe thought that the high unemployment area was the way to go, that maybe more people would be initially trying for rural, and then the thinking switched. Also, there are more rural projects available, so it makes it much more attractive. So there, and actually a number of variables involved with it, but I think it shows the again the strong interest in this excellent program.
Right. And I think the thing that's interesting to me is in the first couple of years, there weren't, as you mentioned, there weren't as many rural projects on the market. Now there are. People are becoming a little bit more sophisticated in their types of projects that they're selecting, at least here in the United States. But in your mind, because rural or USCIS has sort of prioritized the processing of these I-526s, you're seeing a lot more number use potential in the short term for rural than you are in high unemployment. So how does that impact the imposition of final action dates? Because it's a little bit backwards thinking than what we had originally thought. And I think this data just sort of confirms where it is heading in that sense.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, the fact that the Immigration Service is approving the petitions at a priority stage for rural, things are going very quickly from the approval and what numbers are being used. So the original thinking was, okay, there's twice as many high unemployment applicants had petitions filed as numbers available. So the original thinking was that would naturally have a final action date imposed earlier. But that thinking has changed because the fact that the USCIS is approving the rural petitions at a faster rate, even though the limit is higher, the amount of approvals competing for those numbers is much higher. So I now believe that rural is likely to have a final action date imposed before high unemployment.
Interesting. One thing that I look at when we discuss, these final action dates is um, the otherwise unused numbers from rest of world. And when you look at the demand based on these numbers, there's over 2 times as much demand for rest of world for high unemployment than there is for rest of world rural. Does that impact your changing? Because that there would mean that there'd be potentially more for the Chinese and Indian nationals to be used potentially? I mean, I'm just trying to understand, how do you kind of balance out the different variables? And I don't know if you can without all the data, but just trying to, I want to open that up too.
Yeah, in terms of it, if we had access to more of the data, it would be extremely useful. But the fact is that, as you say, high, the rural is for rest of world is lower on a worldwide basis. But that just means that there will be potentially more otherwise unused numbers, and they would then be added to the normal China and India per country limits, and those unused numbers are made available based on priority date order, not anything else. But so that will come into play. But unlike the original unreserved program where the Chinese applicants were, in the early years had the earliest dates, under the uh, new reserved categories, it was kind of everybody was out of the starting gates equally. So the mix between India and China demand, the dates is probably more equalized than it was originally. So we'll see what types of dates. But again, the unused rest of world numbers will flow and can be used by India and China.
Right. Well, when I look at this data and I see rural, I see the most of these unused numbers are going to be going to Chinese in the beginning.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's historically been the case. In the unreserved categories, the bulk of the numbers would go to the Chinese. They had typically the earliest dates. But again, we'll have to see with this where everybody had, like I said, out of the gates with an equal chance to be filing.
right. So, I mean, it, when I first thought about this, my thought would be like that rest of world rural would be the would be the category that remains current the longest. At least that was my initial thinking. And this discussion that we're having is kind of, I don't know if that's really changed that, to be honest. I don't know. Would you agree with that?
I think so. I think that rest of the world will remain current the longest. And once a final action date would be, if it becomes necessary to impose a final action date on rest of world for rural, it'll be much closer to the current calendar date.
Right, right. That makes sense. And what about high unemployment and rest of world? What are your thoughts on that one?
That's going to make things a little bit dicier in
Yeah,
terms of it basically indicates that there will be fewer, if any, numbers flowing, otherwise unused numbers flowing for China and India use. So that will have a bigger impact on the final action dates, which are eventually imposed.
Got it. So I just, we share this data because people need to plan their lives accordingly. And the big benefit that you get be, for somebody who's filing today, who's in the United States, are these interim benefits. And I can't say that loudly enough. For folks who have EB-2 and EB-3 priority dates that are 2000, 17, 18, 19, I still think potentially you're gonna be getting your green card faster with EB-5 than with EB-2, and you get the interim benefit backup plan. So, you get to the goal line faster and you have the backup in the meantime. It's still a race and it's still a line, I should say, right? To get to the end, but there's something you can get out of it in the interim, which is beneficial. But people need to be able to understand these numbers and this, quote unquote, invisible backlog that exists today for people who are filing. So this here is just a different way of looking at the 2025 numbers. And again, this is only through the end of June. So were those last numbers, by the way, only through the end of June. So there's more that's happened over the past, 3, 4 months that we do not know about. And we have been going very, very busy. And I think those numbers are we'll see those have increased. The big thing that I just kind of wanted to mention here, and I've gotten this question, is this rural and high unemployment area? There are projects that qualify for both. And in their I-956F, they show that it is in a rural area. They also show that that rural area has high unemployment, above the national average. So they qualify for both. And they put both of that in the 956F. And then you can put both of those in your I-526E, and presumably you can get in multiple lines because you qualify. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So that's where that's coming from. Just want people to know about that. All right. Charlie, anything here that jumps off at you?
No, well, I think the totals, if people can apply their own applicants per petition, uh, estimates. But if you were to assume, say, 2 applicants per petition, the amount of numbers available in the rural area is closer to what we have petitions filed already. Whereas, as we mentioned earlier, the amount of high unemployment petitions filed already exceeds what the normal annual limits are, with the fact thrown in that they're not processing high unemployment areas petitions as quickly. So there's going to be initially less demand for the numbers available.
Got it. We kind of talked a little bit about this already, but Charlie, anything, this is what our team asked you to kind of write about beforehand. I guess maybe let's talk about shutdown stuff. We say looming shutdown. It's happened. Things have shut down, but we're still seeing appointments being scheduled. We're still seeing adjustments being approved, I-526s being adjudicated. So I don't really see that, but I just kind of wanted from your sort of, you used to work in the government and you were there when there were prior shutdowns. I'm just trying to just could you share just for a moment, like kind of how would that impact the visa office or maybe, how things may have operated there?
Yeah, in previous shutdowns of the government, the Bureau of Consular Affairs continued to operate as normal. So the quote shutdown really didn't have a big impact. It may have slowed down some of the processing, but by and large, really no impact. And the same thing in terms of USCIS. They were using numbers at the same basis. Both of them are fee based, or fee funded program or operations, so that made they were less dependent on the appropriations coming through with the budget. So again, it was basically normal operations.
Got it. From what I've heard in my circles is potentially like contractors and things like that may not be getting paid or something, and like sort of more administrative type things that are necessary towards the process could be
Um,
delaying stuff or I don't know. I was
Now,
go ahead.
I would not be as concerned, at least when I was working. Most of the contractors were continued to be
Oh,
paid.
okay.
That was basically written into the contract. If a contractor was unable to perform their, contracted for duties through no fault of their own, they continued to get paid, and therefore they would often continue to work. So,
Okay.
as
All
I
right.
mentioned, if the National Visa Center, which takes care of the State Department processing, they continued to work through the previous shutdowns.
Okay. That's good to hear. Yeah, sorry, I should have been clearer. I was talking about, I guess, USCIS is
Yeah,
what I was mentioning. But
and I would assume the same would be true for USCIS.
yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. But you guys, if you just joined us, Charlie has indicated that he believes that we will still see current uh, in the reserved categories for all China, India, and rest of world. And that's based on a couple of things, but number one, the pattern that the Department of State is using to put these final action dates, which seem to be happening on a quarterly basis. And there's just not enough data at this point to show that enough numbers have been used to get that quarterly limit. And we're going to get more into that in just a moment. But right,
Yeah,
Charlie?
yeah, and I think one other important thing is Chart B also shows the three reserved categories as current. And even in the extremely, in my opinion, unlikely event that a December date were imposed and reserved, I believe that the Chart B dates would still show current status, which would allow people to continue to file concurrently in the US, which is, again, an extremely good benefit for people that are acting in a timely manner.
Yeah, that's incredibly important. And so how has USCIS historically used Chart B? Can you just explain that a little bit more, like on just in terms of like calendar dates and things like that?
Yeah, typically USCIS has allowed the Chart B dates to be used for early filing, in this case, concurrent filing, through at least January. Typically, they will shut down and revert to only allowing Chart A to be used in the January through March timeframe. So, again, I would expect the categories to stay Chart B current in January.
And one big change that did come up um, in August with related to this Chart B is that although folks would be able to file adjustments, it is not, well, I guess USCIS is arguing that doesn't necessarily mean available in terms of locking in a child's age under Chart B, only under Chart A, which I take issue with, but we'll have to get there when we get there. All right, so I wanted just to talk briefly because if you hadn't seen, I wanted to note that there was this notice of proposed rulemaking that was put out in the Federal Register, and we all thought they were going to increase fees, but they decided nope, they're decreasing fees. They're also creating a new form called the I-527, and that is for people who are with regional centers that have been terminated or new commercial enterprises that have been debarred, and now they have options under the good faith protections of subsection M of the Reform and Integrity Act. And there were a number of notices that were sent out in the past couple of months. And under the act, what's kind of cool is that you can preserve your priority date and your eligibility even if money has been lost if you make another investment and show job creation. And so we are in the process of helping people do this. And it'll be interesting to see what exactly happens with this I-527 and what the fee will ultimately be. I wanted to bring it up here because it is part of the public comment period at this time. And so if people have comments, you can go to the Federal Register and find, you can type in EB-5, find the rule, click on it, and submit a comment. And you can say whatever you want to say. And the US government is supposed to respond to that before implementing a final rule. So I just wanted to put it up. Interestingly, I mean, look at the decrease in the fees for the regional center filings. Um, to me, these $47,000 filing fees were always so crazy and so high. So I'm glad to see that it has come back down, and they should reimburse regional centers. Okay, that's just a joke. All right. All right, so I just wanted to put that out there. You can see some potential changes coming. We don't know when this will happen. There is a 60-day period to comment, and then we will see how they respond. Presumably, they could take a comments and turn it around in a matter of days if they really wanted to. So there's nothing stopping them from doing that. I don't know if this came out during a shutdown. So somebody's working there, right? It's not like, someone had to do that. Someone had to put it in the Federal Register and had to come up and finalize these regs. So, anyway, the other thing about the regs is that they're modifying I-829 regulations as it relates to derivative beneficiaries who file 829s. And that's always been a kind of a point of confusion. What happens if the principal investor dies? What happens if the derivatives come later with a following to join? Are they included? So there's things like that in there that you can also comment on. All right. So this right here is just us kind of saying what the total limits will be in the reserve categories. And the reason why we bring this up is because uh, this number right here, that 4262 and the 31 or 2130 get cut up into four for the quarterly limits. And so, Charlie, take it away.
Yeah. Well, the Immigration and Nationality Act says that only during the first 3 quarters of each year, only 27% of the numbers should be used in each of the quarters. So 81% through the first 3 quarters with 19% left in the final. That's why you will often see potentially the dates being held or retrogressing in the final quarter of July through September. And these quarterly limits apply to all the visa categories, not just the EB-5. So in theory, the State Department should only impose a final action date if the cumulative total of numbers through the month of December would exceed 1,151. That has not happened in the past number use. So there would have to be a very significant increase in number use during the first quarter of fiscal 2026. As we mentioned earlier, unfortunately, we don't have any timely data in terms of the State Department or USCIS number use. So it's hard to kind of quantify, are the numbers being used under these totals. But again, then through the second quarter would be October through March. They would only impose a date if the number use was going to exceed 2302 and so on. And this would be for the rural. These quarterly limits are also imposed for the high unemployment as well. So again, these are the kind of the theory behind things need to be imposed. And since the rural petitions are being approved at a much higher rate, it is more likely that the rural totals would be approved or reached earlier than the high unemployment, strictly on the amount of petitions which have been approved.
Thank you. And what's interesting, at least we are getting some consular interviews for I-526Es. Yeah, those are definitely coming. I think not as fast as we want. Adjustments, which is the majority of my clients these days, it's a wide range. Sometimes I get clients that get adjustments approved in a matter of weeks after the I-526E is approved. I also have clients that have been waiting since February when their I-526E was approved. And that has to do, I believe, with the field office that is adjudicating the individual adjustments. And the reason why I bring that up is because I'm doing a teaser for next month's Chatting with Charlie, where we're hoping to bring, and we are bringing, someone who used to work at USCIS, Michael Valverde. He used to head the field operations director at USCIS. And so he's going to be joining us. My partner, Sharina Garcia, is going to be joining Charlie and I. We're going to be doing a joint webinar, PowerPoint, whatever you want to call it, thing where we talk about USCIS's point of view of number use and adjustment of statuses and how they report. and how that works with the State Department and coordination and things like that. So we're going to try to, demystify or shed some light or whatever you want to use about that type of process because it is unclear for a lot of people and it does make a difference. And if we had the data, of course, we're not going to get timely data, exactly when the number is going to hit. But if we had something, it would be a little bit easier for us to project when these final action dates may be coming.
Yeah, and I think to your point, Joey, in terms of USCIS's approval to actually using the number use on the reserved is increasing. And if USCIS is listening, I would implore you to publish more of your adjustment of status data on a more timely basis, because in the old unreserved categories, overseas number use accounted for probably 85%, maybe more, of the EB-5 number use. I think in the new reserved categories, we're going to get a more equal mix, maybe, 50, 60% overseas, 40% or so, maybe even a higher percentage than that of adjustment of status. So again, uh, hopefully whenever the State Department publishes the data for fiscal 2025, the table 5 will give us some indication of the split. How did things go in the past? Even though reserve number use was low, will this give us any indication how things are likely to be in the future? But again, I think it's going to be a much closer mix of number use because of the availability of people to be filing concurrently in the US.
It's a great point. It's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that. We talked about that previously, but it's a good
Yeah.
point to mention. Yeah,
And
that's
hopefully Michael may next month, maybe Michael can address this issue, what he was seeing.
exactly. So that's why we're bringing them in, and we hope you guys join us next month. This is our. You can always contact us, visalaw@wolfstorff.com. I'm Jay Barnett at wolfstorff.com. We only have a couple of questions, and I'll just go through those. How long is it taking to get 829s approved for post-RIA cases? Do you anticipate any delays? Generally, 829 processing times have been abysmal, and that's why they extended the receipt notice, the date on the receipt notice to 4 years. I have heard anecdotally that they are starting to pick up 829 adjudications, and there's some that are coming even without mandamus in under a year. And so that is a big uh, so that's a big change. When I was talking with Michael Valverde yesterday, and we're going to talk more about this, he did seem to indicate that the IPO office kind of works in like they want to clear out cases, right? So first they were doing like pre-RIA cases, and then they did like direct EB-5, so maybe they're I don't know that I think we're gonna try to get a little bit more insight into that process too. But like for example, we have a number of direct 829s that have been sitting for years and years and years, and now we're getting noids and decisions and things like that. I think, those cases were in a silo that was active. Now they're moving on to the next thing. So generally, a lot of EB-5 investors, I think, resort to mandamus after waiting for so long on I-829s, in particular after the um, receipt notice is done and you have to get that I-551 stamp to travel and work. It's a real pain. And so people do that. All right. Do I anticipate any changes to 829 due to the Trump administration? No, I don't. I don't think 829s are a target at all. Um, Fred asks, what about amendments to an I-829? I think this relates to the good faith investor protections. So yeah, so if you have a pending I-829 and you get a notice of termination from USCIS saying the regional center was terminated, or yeah, and you would be able to take that opportunity to make a new investment and file a new case, or potentially if it's you could still show that the money was used, potentially associate with a new regional center. If you need to show that the money was used, excuse me, needs to be used. So it's very case specific, but yeah, that's now available, which is great. Is there a filing fee or form for the I-829 amendments? So what I understand is, and I don't know, but you're going to file this option 2, option 3, and then at some point, maybe this new I-527 is required for something with the 829. I don't know. It says amendment to 526. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure yet. We will have to see. I don't see anything in that in the rulemaking though. Can I put up slide 7? Sure. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I think that's, which one's slide 7? There we go. These are our takeaways. Yeah, this is just having to do with the USCIS data that came out. And what was really great about it is that they finally showed us based on country of chargeability, based on month, based on um, uh, visa category, the filing numbers, which is great.
Joey, looking at this bullet number 2, the 94% approval rate, I can mention that this is pretty consistent with what the approval rate was in the pre-RIA case petitions for most of the years. They were running, 91% approval rates for the predominantly through the years.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think we have started to see some issues with source of funds, like regional center affiliate loan denials. I'm hearing whispers of partial filing denials. So we may see that number go down. I don't know exactly, but yeah, it's great to see that it is been pretty high. Um, that means us immigration attorneys are doing our job well. All right, so thank you so much for all joining. Please feel free to reach out if you have questions. Charlie, thank you so much. I know so many people depend on what you say, so we really appreciate you in the EB-5 world. And I look forward to speaking with you next month with Michael.
Yeah, one real quick question or comment I forgot to mention. Uh, the State Department, if they were going to see the imposition of a reserved final action date, again, in theory, and what I did in my time, they should publish a notice indicating that this is likely to happen. I tried to do so at least 1 to 2 months in advance if I saw any issues such as this. So the fact that there was nothing published in the November bulletin should bode well for, again, for my thought that everything will stay current for at least December, if not January as well.
Great point. Great point. Awesome. Thank you so much, Charlie. Have a good one.
Take care.
All right. Bye.